Hey, Dr. Maria here. Enjoy this episode from another podcast from the Ethereal Network while I'm out of town taking a break. I'll see you next time. Welcome to The Reluctant Medium, where we cover the gamut of out there conversations. With an open mind and a curious heart, we want to talk about it all. From psychic phenomena and energy medicine to beings from other star systems and out-of-body experiences. You'll find a great balance between grounded science-backed topics and others that science hasn't quite caught up to yet. I'm your host, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, a psychotherapist by trade and a reluctant spirit baby communicator. And hey, even though I'm a medium, I'm not buying everything folks are selling. I just have a voracious appetite to know more about what I call the world of the weird. Join us on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube at The Reluctant Medium. I'll see you there.
Hello, my soul-seeking friends. It's Shanna. Thank you so much for listening to Sense of Soul podcast. Enlightening conversations with like-minded souls from around the world, sharing their journey of finding their light within, turning pain into purpose, and awakening to their true sense of soul. If you like what you hear, show me some love and rate, like, and subscribe. And consider becoming a Sense of Soul Patreon member, where you will get ad-free episodes, monthly circles, and much more. Now go grab your coffee, open your mind, heart, and soul. It's time to awaken. Today I have with me Jennifer Mitchell. She is a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner, and she is also a BQH practitioner, which is the online format. Jennifer is the founder of the Soul Experience, where she says miracles are normal. With a single session, her clients can experience life-altering, powerful change. They can find out their life's purpose, release deeply rooted trauma, and receive the answers to most of their important life questions. She is super passionate about this technique, and for herself, she found it to be absolutely profound and life-changing, as it also has been for her many clients. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm so excited to hear more about how you landed into the quantum healing hypnosis technique. And I can't wait to share my experience with our listeners, because it was amazing and you're lovely. It's been a pleasure getting to know you too. I've also done some of your ancestry, and it's just been super fun. I would love to have you share with our listeners how you landed into this modality.
Absolutely. So I am based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. So I believe it was in 2016 is when I first discovered Dolores Cannon. I was scrolling through YouTube and I came across a video, and I just stopped and was like, who is this lady? Well, she looks like she should be knitting a blanket for her grandchildren, but she's talking about all this really interesting stuff. She's talking about past life regression and transcending to new earth by raising our vibration and alien abductions and all this stuff that was so fascinating. So I went down this Dolores Cannon rabbit hole, I'll just say, and decided that I wanted to have a session so bad. After researching it and learning all about it, I found a practitioner. At the time, there was nobody here in Las Vegas. So the closest practitioner I could find was in LA. So I flew to LA, booked a hotel room, had my session, which was absolutely wild. It was so amazing. And during the part where we speak to our subconscious, there's a question and answer period at the end of the session. My subconscious actually told me that I should be a practitioner. And I didn't know where to take that, because I was involved in the corporate world, was plugged into the matrix, doing the whole 9 to 5, absolutely miserable, I will say. And so I took this information and I just sat on it, but it was always playing in the back of my mind from then on that I wasn't on the right path and I need to be doing something more. And then the desire and the urge over the years just kind of got, more and more that I was on the wrong path. When the pandemic hit, I was an executive at a large bank in town, and it was really hard because we had a lot of virtual staff and virtual team. And when the pandemic hit, we lost a lot of the virtual team. And so I had all this work and half my team, and it was really stressful. So I really took a step back at my life, and I'm like, do I really want to be sitting in these boardrooms and having these meetings and all this work, or do I want to take a break? And so, as interesting as it is, but the pandemic was really the catalyst for change for me. So I love my full-time job. My husband thought it was crazy. Oh my
I've heard
goodness.
this a lot.
And I decided to go full-time into being a practitioner. And it was scary at first. A lot of people hadn't really heard, I don't think, about QHHT. Now, more and more people are finding out about this modality of healing, and I'm getting sessions like all the time, and I'm really busy actually. So it's been a fun journey. I've really discovered myself through helping others as well. And I'm fulfilled in my work, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. It's my calling, and I see miracles happen every day. I mean, it's incredible what comes up in these sessions. It really is.
Had you ever had a past life regression, or had you been interested in any of that before your first session?
No, no, honestly, until I found Dolores, I've always been highly intuitive and empath since I can remember. And I knew that there's more out there, but I never really researched it and dived into it and was on the path until I discovered her. She really was also, part of my awakening journey. When I started listening to all her videos and stuff, my mind was just like expanding so fast. And I just dove right in and kind of became obsessed with everything about QHHT, past life regression, the subconscious, what comes up, our soul, and how many lifetimes our soul is lived. And it's just fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And I think that's what keeps me going too, is the interest in what's going to come up today. Where is my client going to go today? What are we going to experience? It's always different, unique, and absolutely nothing short of a miracle.
Wow. Dolores Cannon was more like science-based than spiritual when she first got into this. Is that right?
Yes. And, I like to refer to Dolores Cannon as a spiritual pioneer. I mean, she started doing past life regression work in the 1950s and really pushed the boundaries and opened a new way of thinking for people on a global scale. And this is in a time right when nobody was talking about this stuff at all. And before she passed, she'd authored, I want to say 17 books, and had trained thousands of practitioners around the world. But what's really unique about the Dolores Cannon method is it's not like typical hypnosis at all. I have clients that come to me like, I can't be hypnotized. And first things, that's not true. Everybody can be hypnotized. Every single person can. And with her method is that she's created a way to contact the higher self, subconscious, oversoul. It has many names, but it's a part of us that is connected to source. And when we connect with that, that's where the real interesting stuff happens. And that's what makes QHHT unique, is that we're connecting with a different part of the mind than a typical hypnosis session would.
Are you connecting also to like your Akashic field of your Akashic records in some way? Because that's what it felt like kind of for me.
Absolutely, 100%. And so when we call forward the subconscious, that usually happens after the past life regression, we are calling forward the part of us that has access to the past, present, future, to all the records. And I even say that, I could call forward Shanna's subconscious mind. You are the part that has, the access to everything that's ever happened to her soul in this lifetime and all the other lifetimes. So 100%, we are tapping into the Akashic records. And Dolores Cannon even talks about that in some of her books and even in some of the videos that are out there as well.
The only book I ever read of Dolores Cannon's was The Three Ways. She reminds me a lot of like Brian Weiss, through their own work, discovered that there was all these similarities in their clients, which I found to be just unbelievable.
Yeah. And, when you actually talk about similarities with clients, I would like to touch on that. And that's, for me, is one way that I validate my work. 100% is the synchronicities across my clients. My clients don't know each other. And I can have a client regress to a time and place. And then several weeks later, I can have a client regress to a very similar time and place, maybe even the same time and place. And the things that they say are spot on, identical. When I realize, I'm like, okay, this is a place, my client was at a few weeks ago. Let me ask the same questions. every single time the answers align. And that's really validating.
Yeah, that's almost proof, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they don't know each other, that's remarkable. Dolores Cannon talks about in 3 waves how we are star-seeded here. That's what her clients were saying, that they were from these different places, that they were coming down for a specific purpose. And you see that right now, a lot of people, well, especially the younger generations and some of our generations, awakening, we're like connecting back to the roots of what she actually was receiving from her clients back then.
Absolutely. So everything that she wrote about in her books was information that came through her clients globally, from the higher self of her clients. And she found many synchronicities enough to where she was able to author 17 books. So she wrote about this in the 3 waves of volunteers, was that in 1945, when Hiroshima detonated, that it sent out like a vibration, because everything is interconnected and intertwined, all of the realms, dimensions. And so it sent out like this shock wave. And at that time, I mean, people were nervous about it because we could potentially destroy much more than just our own planet. And so that's when the call went out, and hence the 3 waves of volunteers. So the first wave of volunteers was the baby boomers, and they entered into like this thick consciousness, and they really had to overcome a lot and pave the way for change and for the new thinking for the second wave. And the second wave started to trickle in around the early to mid 80s. Here I am. Now, we have definitely, to your point, those who are coming in now are the most enlightened. They're really gravitating to this type of work. And so star seeds, absolutely, is what they call it. People coming in from different planets to come and help raise the vibration of Earth to more of a heart-based vibration, and out of this more like 3D mind matrix that we were living in previously.
Okay, Jennifer, this is kind of interesting, but you and I both have children the same age as well. And we were just talking about them right before we started the interview. My daughter is so sensitive. She is not like my other 3 older children, by any means. I mean, they all have unique things about them, but I have kids from, my oldest son is almost 26 years old. What the? Hensley's almost 11. And she just came in so very raw. She's extremely empathetic. I mean, the other night she was crying. Like, I think she said she cried herself to sleep about some Willow project. And she asked me in the morning, do you know what the Willow project, Mom? And it was about the polar bears and the penguins in Alaska. And she was blaming our president. But, I mean, can you imagine thinking that way when you were their age?
No, I really can't. So there's definitely different. And it's so interesting. I just got chills when you started talking about her, because 2 nights ago, I took my son, who's also 11, out for ice cream. And we're sitting there, we're eating our ice cream. And I'm like, let's go, hun. Let's just wrap this up and we'll just, save it and go home. When we get in the car, he was like, Mom, I'm really glad we left, because somebody walked in and they had a brown energy cloud around them. And I looked at him and I was like, wait, what? And he was like, I'm more aware than you think I am, Mom. I feel energy. And I said, okay. I need to teach you how to zip up. And he's like, what does that mean? And so we started talking about it. But yeah, it's just incredible where they're at. And I am so excited to see the development and the changes that are going to happen with this new generation. Can you imagine?
I mean, when you said that, the waves were originally called into a time that was very scary for the Earth. Yeah. That is what we're going through right now. We talked about that before we got on as well. I mean, you have threats of nuclear weapons, you have war, Mother Earth is reacting with all of her might from the inside out with her earthquakes and destruction, hurricanes. And you can tell there is a vibration that is happening that is catastrophic almost, right? And so, but maybe that's what our littles are here for.
And I do definitely agree with that. You can feel it. Things feel very different, especially even since the pandemic. Like, things have shifted. And I think that most people can feel that, whether they're on a conscious path or not. It's undeniable, the change and the shift that we felt. And growing up in this world, I can't even imagine being a kid right now. And so it's important to know, for me as a parent, we're extra sensitive and, hyper aware. And I'm always like putting myself in my son's position. As a kid, I thought the world was scary, the big bad world. I can't even imagine now. So they definitely are special. They're here and they're going to go through a lot more in their lifetime than we've ever seen. That's for certain.
And they're going to teach us too. They're going to teach us.
Absolutely.
What's interesting is that I had this aha moment when I was going through my own journey, discovering that, I believe we're all empaths, but some of us are more sensitive than others. And I was looking at my children and I realized, oh my gosh, it is so important as a parent for you to know. Just like it's important for you to know that if they're struggling at school where they may need extra help, that if your child is sensitive or is an empath or is, able to see auras. My daughter sees auras, by the way, in color. And or having, spiritual experiences or dreams, for you to nourish that, for you to be aware of that and be there for them because they picked you as a parent for that reason.
Right. Absolutely. And it's interesting you said auras, because that's exactly what during our conversation, my son is like, oh yeah, I can see different colors around people. I have a greenish yellow. And so he knew like his own aura. And I was really shocked by that because he'd never opened up to me to that level. And I agree with you 100%. It is our responsibility as parents to nurture that. On the same token, sometimes I'm very cautious on what I say because I also think like, I don't want to overwhelm him. A kid should be a kid. He's still discovering and finding himself. And I do past life regression work. And I'm like, he needs to focus on this mission, this journey here and now as a child. When he's older, we can work on, past lives. And that's actually touch on that as a practitioner. I would never regress anybody under 18 for that specific reason, because I think that you're still developing. There's enough confusion growing up already. I wouldn't want to do a session on a child or a young adolescent. I've had people come to me and I've said no for that reason, because they think that they need to first find themselves, first focus, get their bearings in this lifetime. When you're older and, your mind is more, developed and you can handle that, that would be an appropriate time to do, a past life regression. This is my opinion as a practitioner.
I don't know if you knew, Jennifer, but Tinsley, my youngest, the 11-year-old, she is actually why I had my first past life regression. So by the time she was 5, it was like between 4 and 5, she had recalled 2 lives. Wow. And one of them by like first and last name, occupation, location. As she got older, she stopped talking about it. But I mean, she was a little girl who loved princesses and ponies and said she was an old man one time. It made no sense. And so that's why I ended up getting my first past life regression. But I wanted to ask you, what is the difference between a past life regression and a quantum healing hypnosis session?
With the past life regression is actually part of the quantum healing hypnosis. And that's a good question, Shanna, because there is a lot of healing that actually does happen throughout the past life regression portion. Oftentimes we're carrying trauma that's stored and trapped in the body that we brought from those previous lifetimes, or maybe if there was a traumatic death experience. And where the quantum really comes into play is because time is quantum. When we're connected with that deep part of us, and I have my clients in that somnambulistic state of mind, there's no time. When we connect with, the subconscious, the higher self that's connected to source, there's no like here now, everything is happening at once for them. So when I regress a client, I am experiencing this. I am seeing this. They don't have any concept of where they're at. And what I've also uncovered as a practitioner, it's my opinion and my belief, is that with time, it's very hard for the human mind to grasp the concept of time, I think. And time is simultaneously occurring all at once, all at the same time, is what I have uncovered as a practitioner through sessions. And what I'm starting to notice is we can be living in this moment right here, right now, but we're also at the same time, simultaneously on another timeline, in another realm, in another dimension, in a previous life, future life. And it's all happening all at once. And it's hard to kind of like wrap the head around it. So that's where the quantum comes into play, is because we're really tapping into that part of us that is really connected and unbound by time. So it's quantum. And in the healing, because we release a lot of trauma. And we also ask the mind to scan the body during the session. And so when your mind is scanning a body, it's looking for anything that's not in perfect harmony that it can heal. And of course, then we do the questions and answers, and we can ask, questions about past lives, future, things like that.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I experienced that with you. I would say just personally from having, a few past life regressions before, and then this session, I was not expecting to jump that much between lives and between beings. I mean, at one point, I still am shocked. I've only told a few people, and just for the listeners, I went from this life. It wasn't all beautiful and joy, but I felt like it was a normal kind of situation, to when Jennifer asked me to look at my feet, I didn't have feet. Like, I was looking for feet and I didn't have feet, and I was scaly. And so that freaked me out. In fact, I think that my ego and like my human self kind of like wanted to jolt out of that and like find some reason or something. I don't know. Actually, I'm not really sure what was happening, but I do remember feeling very uncomfortable. I felt a resistance of my own brain. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. And so just to fill in a little bit of a gap there. So after your past life, we kind of hung out on the other side to see what would come forward. And so you found yourself in a very interesting time and place. And I asked for you again to look down to see if you had a physical form, a physical body. And I could tell, even though you're in hypnosis, I could tell it was a little bit shocking for you, because you're like, I'm scaly. If I recall correctly, because I've done a lot of sessions actually since then too, you had webbed hands. Yeah. One thing I've also found out through my sessions is that the soul is always the same. Personalities change from lifetime to lifetime, experience to experience, but the soul is always the same. And so regardless of what avatar, I'll just call it an avatar, you're wearing, it's still you and the person that you are now inside of that avatar. I tell that you were a little shocked by that in the session.
I was extremely shocked. Yeah. And it was like my ego started to judge my own self. Like here I am observing something, and I'm like my brain was like, no. For some reason, I think it's just because of what I've been told, right? I've been told maybe, reptilians have an agenda.
What's something interesting is that what I found, and this happens a lot after maybe somebody lives a lifetime, is that the soul goes to a place to get cleansed. So when we're on the other side, it's very common, I'll ask my client, where are you now? And I'm going somewhere. I'm going to clean my soul. I'm going to get cleansed. And so that's happened several times. If somebody needs a cleansing of the soul after a certain lifetime, that they'll go to this place where their soul is cleansed, and then they can prepare for the next lesson, the next journey.
Well, and here's a silly thing is that, so I was trying to make excuses for my reptilian self where I was telling someone about it. I was like, well, I could have just been like a lizard or an alligator, like an animal. And then I was like, however, I was standing like straight up. So, but yeah, actually the episode that I just released with Chris Macklin, we actually talked about that, because he's a Melchizedek being. And, I've taken classes where I've really connected with Lyrans. I've had many people actually associate me with Sirius, being Syrian. So I'm sure that we've had lives of all of these different beings so that we can experience all of it. If we're even talking about this right now, that means that we've probably had way more than a few lives. And we've had a lot of experiences of the different beings in different planet systems.
Absolutely. And, everybody's really is different. I've had clients who've only had 3 lives. I had one the other day that's only lived 3 because in between the lives, she actually is an assigner. So assigners are the people who will review the life with you and then help you determine where you want to go, what you want to do, and what lesson you want to take on next. So she had only actually experienced 3 lifetimes because when she's an assigner. And then I've had people who have had hundreds of lives, and very common, I have people regress to other planets. Lemuria is actually common. The beautiful crystalline city comes up a lot with my clients, and they all describe this same, crystalline city, the red planet, which sounds like a futuristic version of Mars, to be honest. I'm still trying to figure the red planet out, but I've had at least 6 or 7 clients regress there, and they all say the exact same thing. It's a futuristic planet. Everybody has to live indoors because the environment, they can't breathe the air outside. And so this whole entire society is an indoor society, very high tech, non-monetary. And so again, there's that validation. Everyone's telling me the same thing.
I regressed Mandy to a place where she described everything was crystal, like that.
Yeah. It's I'm just getting chills. Yes. And everything is crystal, and they communicate telepathically.
What about the transportations?
On the red planet, the transportation is all magnetic. And so that's where it sounds like an Elon Musk version of Mars. It really, really does. Very futuristic, high tech, non-monetary. Everybody has a job that they're supposed to do. And the food is interesting. Everyone says the food just appears. I push buttons and the food appears. It sounds like Star Trek. Again, it's about those synchronicities, and it's very validating when these people do not know each other and are all telling me the same thing, and the sky is red. So
you're describing it sounds so familiar, which is something you and I talked about, and it ended up happening during my regression, is that and I've talked about this, our listeners may have heard, my daughter and I and other people have gone to this terminal, and it's just sleek white. And, I've had many, many, reoccurring dreams of it for years. And then I found myself there again in your session, which was shocking. I had no idea I was going to be there.
That was like one of the coolest sessions for me. And yes, the terminal. And so you said that it was a terminal that had portals to any universe, realm, or world, and that you have the opportunity to go anywhere. And it's so interesting because when I'm doing these regressions with my clients, oftentimes, we video a session. If it's via Zoom, I'll have my eyes closed and I see everything. I'm very clairvoyant. So I see everything that you're seeing. I felt like I was right there with you. I could see the portals, and you can see, through the portals. And it was very interesting.
In your bio, it says these sessions, they can help with life purpose, release trauma, and get you answers to very important questions in your life. That can really help somebody on the journey during this time as we're evolving.
Absolutely. I mean, look at my story. If I wouldn't have had a session, I wouldn't think I would be here now helping other people. So the number one question that clients come to me on the list of questions is, what is my life purpose? And I won't say what that is, but I will give a hint that everyone has the same life purpose.
Really? Wow.
The same. Everybody has the same exact answer. I have not heard a different answer yet. So it's interesting, and people get the answers to everything. Sometimes there could be a question on there and the subconscious will be irrelevant, maybe because it doesn't serve their higher purpose to know the answer to that. There's really no question that I won't ask. Well, actually, that's not true. The only question I won't ask, and somebody came to me with this, I was like, no, is when will I die? And that's because it doesn't really serve your higher purpose mentally to know that. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, I have 200 days left, So I was like, no, I won't ask that. And your subconscious wouldn't answer it anyways. More than likely, the often response is irrelevant. It's very to the point.
Well, I felt that my past life regression part was very amazing because it was a story that I had never heard in my life. And yet I could totally see that happening. Mm-hmm. So just to give our listeners an example, I was a younger lady and I had a little brother, and it just seemed like it was the two of us. And I would make these headscarves and then go to a market and sell them. Seems like my brother became like the face or the man that helped me be successful. But I was kind of like the brains and the one doing it. And then my father came and took my brother to be his heir and to work with him. And because I was a businesswoman and I wouldn't like go marry who he wanted me to and all the things, there was like, you know, some tension and separation. That's so crazy. There's no way I could have made up that shit.
No. And emotions is another way that I validate this work, is because the emotions that come with those experiences. Sometimes my clients will cry or they're angry. Very validating for me as a practitioner. And maybe for listeners, you talk about like, for you, because everybody's different. Did you see visually or did you more feel into what was going on during your session? How was it like for you when you regressed? Because everybody's different. I'm a feeler. I feel like this is happening. And
No, I saw everything as very clear scenes, almost like a movie in my mind. I didn't hear anything. I think maybe I may have felt a little bit, and in color even, actually, which is interesting. So I'm like you. When I have sessions with my clients, I see what they're going through. In fact, I have sessions called soul immersion sessions, and that's exactly what I do. It turned into that, it morphed into that, because I was seeing where they were going into their sacred space. And, you know, I could see them walking around in it. That's how I experienced this as well. But I did definitely feel emotion. You know, my little brother, I ended up naming like my youngest son, I believe it was, after him. His name was David, which is interesting because my spirit guide, the mute monk, is David, which we also had contact with him too. So you do the past life regression, and then you wanted to speak to my highest self, I guess, or my oversoul. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we call forward the oversoul at that point in time to come and answer your questions, to scan the body. Again, you know, the self-healing is a very big part of a quantum healing hypnosis session. And so we did the body scan, you're looking for anything that's not aligned in perfect harmony, trapped emotions, chakras that are blocked. And, you know, so your subconscious came forward to answer that. And we went through your list of questions, got all of that information. And I always ask, is there any advice? Is there any guides or anybody here with us today that wants to come forward? A lot of times spirit guides or loved ones that have passed will come forward, you know, with words for the client too.
It's so interesting. Every time I've ever been put under hypnosis, there are certain things that are highlighted that stay with me. And then there's many little things that I overlook or forget until I listen to it again. In a hypnosis session that I had years ago, where it was like, I was like so into the past life regression that I kind of forgot some details about when we had done in between lives. David actually called me by my soul's name, and I did not remember that or hear it till 2 years later after that regression. So do you find that many people don't know really what the connections are, and then way later down the road, they're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what that meant?
Oh yeah, I get emails all the time. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a client, his spirit guide name was Gary. And we thought that was interesting. It was like, my spirit guide, Gary. And it was like, okay, Gary. And then Gary came forward and had messages. And it was actually a few months ago, I should say. And then a couple of weeks ago, I got a text. It was like, hey, remember me? I'm the one that had the spirit guide, Gary. And I was like, oh yeah. Cause we both kind of chuckled about that. We're like, what a name, like Gary, the spirit guide. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, I was talking with my mom, and that was my great grandpa. And she showed me a picture, and it was him. And he didn't know that that was his great grandpa's name. He had no idea. So,
and that was actually him that he saw.
It was 100%. He said, I'm still tripping out over it. And I was even like, wow, you know, again, just more validation.
You know, because we're so multidimensional, we're dealing with ancestors, we're dealing with past lives, we're dealing with future lives. Oh my God. I guess that's what's quantum.
Absolutely. And we're only beginning to touch the surface. So I'm so excited to see what continues to evolve and come up, especially in this line of work and what we're uncovering. It's just fascinating. And That's why I love it so much. I'm so passionate about what I do and helping people, getting them the answers, clearing out, the trauma and finding out, what's harming or hurting the body or anything. Even like diet related questions is a very common question. What's the best diet for me? And the subconscious will be like, oh, no dairy or no grain, and just anything that you want to know to help you, we can get those answers. So
now,
fascinating.
can you help yourself? Can you help yourself with quantum healing, or is this something that you have to have a practitioner for yourself?
I think I could. However, and I actually thought about like recording myself, right? And then like inducing myself that way, but I probably would just trade with a practitioner. We have a network where we trade amongst each other. So I do try to do a session myself every other month or so that I can ensure that so that I make sure I'm still on my right path and I have that guidance coming through as well. And even through meditation, although we connect with the higher self in meditation, it's still very different than a quantum session where you're verbally, your higher self is verbally answering and coming through crystal clear with the answers for you. So I do try to get my own sessions every other month or so.
So is that what you recommend? Like how often to get sessions?
Well, it's different, I think, for everybody. For me, it's also because I work, in this field, I have access to do those sessions. I have some clients who come in for one session and that's all that they need. And then I have people who come in monthly, ongoing. And so I think it's really different. With quantum healing, it is so powerful. You do really only need just a single session. But if you're feeling guided, intuitively drawn to have more than one, then always, with anything, you trust your intuition. So.
Okay. So what kind of follow-up or what kind of care after the session is important?
Definitely. Just integration is a big thing. So after the session, I find that the gateway to your subconscious mind, the higher self, is open for 2 to 3 days. So oftentimes clients will have dreams, they'll see have synchronicities, visions that can come through. That is not uncommon. So be aware, maybe have like a journal or a notebook so that you can write those things down. And after the session, sometimes, you could be a little tired that day. So just make sure you have the day off. You don't have anything else planned or scheduled. Sessions, as you know, could be anywhere from 4 to 5 hours. We dig deep. You need to come open, raw, and ready to heal, to talk about everything for the most successful session. And so afterwards, just making sure that you have that time to relax and take care of yourself. And number one, most important, is to listen to the recording. And because you touched on this earlier, that it's like a dream. Sometimes you'll start to forget some important chunks of information that came through. So we have that recording. The recording does carry the quantum healing energy and those messages that your subconscious has for you. So it's very important. I always tell my clients, please listen to it in 24 to 48 hours because it really reinforces and integrates those messages in with your mind, body, and soul.
There was a lot of things for myself that I got answers to, just like the portals within the terminal. Had no idea what that terminal was for. It's been a question and, mystery for all of these years. That was super amazing. And just the different roles that we play in different lives with our soul family. I see this to be a common thing with all my past lives. Is that common?
Yeah. And I'm glad actually that you brought that forward. It's very common. And as a practitioner, when we're going through the past life, I will often say, I get these gut instincts. I'll say, look into this person's eyes. Do you recognize they're on a soul level? And sometimes they're like, no, I don't recognize them. Or they're like, oh my gosh, yes, this is, my sister, my daughter, my brother. So that's very, very common that through the past life regression, that they will look into the person's eyes while they're having that experience and instantly know and recognize them on a soul level. So we are always uncovering, the soul family.
Okay. So now I'm remembering something. So particular people were very detailed to me, but then I remember my husband was not. He was just a figure. I can't even really see his face. I don't remember him that much at all. But I know that he was there, but he wasn't so significant as my little brother. And so that's so interesting. And also there's the old man who was a religious man who taught me how to read. That was a big thing. I mean, I was a pretty badass woman in that life for that time. And so it was very powerful, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. I got a lot from it. Like, there was pieces to puzzles, that were solved. And I think it was a very helpful part of my evolution.
I'm so happy to hear that. And it was such a pleasure having the opportunity to do the session with you and to be your practitioner and to help you get those answers and uncover those lost memories and even life lessons, come forward as well, remembering those lessons that you learned in previous lives. And I feel so connected with you now too. And you're helping me with my family tree, which I'm so excited about. And
And also, I feel like I just want to let the listeners know that you, as a practitioner, you are so patient. You are so very clear, and you created a very safe space for me. You did not lead me in a way that was manipulating in any way. You were just very authentic and kind and created a very loving container. I felt very safe, right? Because that's important. When you're willing to be, hypnotized and put under and go back or forward or wherever, you don't know, what might be there. So I appreciate that. Yeah, it was very beautiful.
And, if you don't mind, I'll just touch on that, because to your point, sometimes, people might be a little apprehensive about coming for hypnosis, but it is safe. I mean, you're talking to your higher self. And I always tell my clients, your higher self wants to take care of you. So it's only going to bring forward information. It's going to help you. That's going to serve you. Some people could be a little bit scared, but there's really nothing to be scared about. I've even had the subconscious protect clients, and they don't need to know that. And so if there is something that doesn't serve your higher self, or that maybe mentally, does not help you, it won't come forward in a session. And, I'm always use my intuition to guide me in sessions. When you're experiencing the reptilian, we weren't there very long. And that's because intuitively, I felt that from you, that you were a little bit shocked and and so I actually moved you forward at that point in the session.
Yeah. I'm like, I want out of this body. It's slimy.
You didn't need to say that, because my intuition told me, okay, she's a little bit of, shock right now. So we drifted and floated and moved forward from there.
Oh, see, that's so beautiful. You really created a very safe, amazing, beautiful experience for me that definitely offered me a lot of answers. I felt like, there was a lot of things that otherwise I may have never known. So I appreciate it. I thank you very much for being part of my journey. And tell everybody, if they want to have a session with you, which I absolutely recommend 100%, where they could find you and how that's done, if you do it in person or online.
Absolutely. So I can do sessions in person. I am located here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I also have online certification as well. And we have very successful sessions online. Some people feel more comfortable in the comfort of their own home. Some people want to come in person. So either way, it can accommodate. And if you are feeling called to have a session, more than likely it's your higher self telling you that there's information or advice that it wants to give you. You can reach out to me with questions or to book. My website is thesoulexperiences.com, and that is plural with an S. You follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Jennifer Mitchell, QHHT. And if you'd like to send an email, you could even send me an email to thesoulexperiencelv@gmail.com.
I also saw on your website, it says train with me. Do you actually teach this as well?
I don't teach the actual QHHT. Okay. I do teach past life regression. If you're interested in becoming a past life regressionist, I do one-on-one training. I prefer one-on-one training because I want to be there to personally guide you, answer any questions. We can book clients together. I will guide you with your clients. And I can even do that online if you prefer online, or in person if you're here in Las Vegas. And now it's time to break that shit down. If you're at a place, where I was, and I'm assuming maybe Shanna, you probably were there as well, where you're working this day-to-day job and it just feels like you are not serving your life purpose, that is a calling to do something else. That's probably your higher self nudging you in a different direction. And don't be afraid. Take the leap. The universe is always taking care of you. You are where you are now because you've always been taken care of. And it might sound scary or feel scary, but once you do it, you're going to feel just so alive, living your life purpose. And I thought it would be a lot more scary than it actually is. And I'm still here. I'm doing great and haven't been happier ever. So just take the leap. Don't be afraid to do so.
Because you're living your purpose. Well, thank you so much. You're a wonderful speaker.
Thank you. That means so much to me.
Thanks for listening to Sense of Soul podcast. And thanks to our special guests for joining me. If you want more of Sense of Soul, check out my website at www.mysenseofsoul.com, where you can work with me one-on-one or help support Sense of Soul podcast by donating to my coffee fund. Thanks for listening.